Let's continue with the conclusion of Chapter 6. The Arapahoe Basin Corporation didn't have much money. Luckily, Max, Earl, and the 6 boys working up there did not require much pay. Max used his bulldozer and charged enough just to keep it going. Our savings were dwindling because of the high grocery bills. The old cabin up in the alpine meadow in the basin was in good shape. I suggested to Larry and Sandy that I loan them a cook stove. Besmore had found another one in Idaho Springs for $10. If they could find a cook, the boys could bunk up there. Sometime later, a fellow from Texas came up to cook, and the boys moved up to Arapahoe Basin. Thank heavens. The chairlift line had been cut and cleared up the mountain, and 2 trails were ready. A small shelter of lumber and slabs designed by OPA was in the process of being constructed at Midway, next to the unloading platform site for the lower lift. A track cable was needed for the lift. Someone knew of a used mining cable which could be bought for much less than the new one. The mine where the cable was bought was somewhere near Monarch Pass. Max tells about getting the cable. It was a rough old drive up this crooked shelf road full of switchbacks and just wide enough for the flatbed truck. A half-mile up there, at about 11,000 feet, was a diesel cat coughing away. The cat skinner pointed out a kind of ramp where a tremendous reel wound with about a mile of 1¼ inch steel cable sat ready to load. After a lot of pushing and pulling with the dozer, we finally got the monster loaded on the truck. Somehow we avoided giving the one wrong nudge which could have sent the whole outfit screaming into the South Fork of the Arkansas River 1,000 feet below. Soon we would see this cable, which for years had trammed tons of silver ore off a rugged mountain, serve as a track for moving thousands of skiers up into the silvery snowfields high on Norway Mountain. With September came the turning of the aspens and cold nights. We had finished with all the canning and were ready for winter to come. Oma and Opa had been working on their house down in our meadow. They were lucky to have found 3 Swedes at the old Keystone Village. The village was not really a village, but merely a few old cabins, a couple of neat newer cabins, and a house of board and batten painted white. There was a sawmill to the west of Keystone where these Swedes had been working. Opa had been upset when he received the first load of lumber from the sawmill up in Montezuma. Sometimes there would be a difference in the width of 1 to 1¾ inch of the boards. Peter Leyden, John Flinkberg, or Eric Erickson would look at a board, then take an axe or hatchet and start trimming. When they had finished, that board would measure perfectly from top to bottom. With the scarcity of materials so soon after the war, it looked like the house couldn't be finished until spring. Driving that dusty road where Opa had counted 28 curves up to Montezuma to the boarding house would be too much come winter. It was decided that the old main cabin would be comfortable for us. Besides the two good-sized rooms downstairs, there was a narrow stairway along the side of the hall which separated the rooms. This led to 2 loft rooms upstairs, which could be our bedrooms. We located another cook stove for the kitchen and a pot-bellied stove for the other room, which would become our living room. I began to feel quite elegant with all these rooms. The hand-hewn squared timber walls we had oiled, with new plaster chinking. I thought it looked beautiful. It still does after 35 years. Oma and Opa moved into their little cabin, feeling very much at home with all their furniture finally theirs to be used again. We were all set to hole up again for another winter, but we still had no electricity. Since we used all of our savings to feed the crew during the summer, we were glad that Max had a job for the winter. Money was still needed to put in the lifts. A rope tow had been installed on the hill above the Midway meadow, not too far from the shelter. The crew had built nearby a three-seater privy on a knoll among the spruce. I was told that if you were quite sure no one was coming by, you could leave the door open and enjoy a spectacular view of Black Mountain. However, I never trusted my luck that much. Earl thought the privy was a bit cold for the customers. He found some old fur somewhere and lined the edges of the privy seats. He said it was probably the only ski area with the distinction of having mink-lined toilet seats. Publicity was needed. There had been one or two small articles in the Denver papers of the fabulous new ski area to be opened in the winter of 1946, but not much else. Getting together with Larry and Sandy, we thought up a party for the press at Midway as soon as there would be enough snow for skiing. Sandy came down to ask Edna and me if we would help with the party. A friend had offered to cook up some soup. There would be cases of beer. It was a sunny day with a good snowfall. The press people, who had been brought up by Max in his Jeep in several trips, came piling into the main room of the small shelter where some wooden tables and benches had been placed. The kitchen had a good-sized wood range on which was simmering a big kettle of soup. Edna and I found 8 heavy crockery soup bowls, which had been used for the trail crew. We couldn't serve 30 to 40 people from these unless we could wash them in between. But what to use for a dishpan? I spotted a big mixing bowl and filled it with hot water. That's all the hot water we got for cooking for me, unless you want to hike up the mountain to where there's water coming out of a pipe, or you could melt some snow. This'll do, I reassured him. After handing out the bowls of soup and madly washing the bowls in between, the water got greasier and greasier. We covered the wash bowl with a dish rag so no one could see it. We stuck a bowl in and tried to wipe it clean and then filled the bowl for the next guest. No one got ill, and the write-ups were great. We had been too busy with the soup to watch our kids. When it was time to collect the children, we looked high and low for our 4-year-olds, Sonny and Joanna. Eleanor and Rolf had been playing outside, coming in once in a while to get warm. But where were Sonny and Joe? We finally looked in the back storage room where the cases of beer for the party had been stored. Some had been already opened to be handed out quickly. We thought it was pop, said our girls in tears. 2 sadder, dizzier little girls we had never seen. Since we had to wait for the guests to be driven down to their cars below, Edna and I decided not to wait for a ride. Besides, we felt fresh air would be the best thing for our 2 little girls. After putting on their skis, Edna and I skied down the road, each holding a drooping child between their skis. Was it worth it, we wondered? We eagerly waited for what the press would write. The most poetic one I couldn't help but save for a future scrapbook. It read, $150,000 ski area underway in Colorado near Loveland Pass at 13,000 feet. Arapahoe Basin's superior features are 6 feet of powder snow, rolling slopes dropping down for miles, spruce forests, snow plumes streaming from the cornice ridges and swirling in gullies, and above all the glistening sunlight. By next summer, this new resort will have 2 chairlifts of modern design to whisk the skier from a parking area on US Highway 6 to the summit of Norway Mountain at 12,000 feet. Up there at the summit is being built the Snow Plume Refuge. We're still waiting for the Snow Plume Refuge. A clubhouse with huge picture windows where guests can see the twilight sun tip the distant peaks, the massive Cordillera of the Rockies, in an eerie golden light, while purple shadows spread through the valley of the Snake far below. So now we're in the valley of the Snake, we laughed together, and not in Montezuma Valley. Thus ends chapter 6. We'll pick up with vacations, peaches, and silver next time.